Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. Flashback, Ben, on the SURV. The pilot of the SURV suggests you might want to get on the M249, light machine gun formerly called the squad automatic weapon. I asked, why is that? I thought the scumsuckers didn't shoot at the serves. He replied, that used to be the case, but then they got smart and figured out that was how we were moving a hell of a lot of forces. Now we're lucky if we don't get strafed with AK fire and have at least 1 or 2 RPGs launched at us each trip. I jumped up and manned the 249 just in time because all hell broke loose. The scumsuckers were firing AKs at us from the bridges. The M249 made short work of most of them. The pilot ordered, make sure you check our 6 because some of the sneaky scumsuckers wait until we pass and then jump up to fire. I checked our 6 just in time as one of the scumsuckers jumped up with an RPG. I nailed him just as he fired and caused the rocket to spiral off course and slam into the bank of the river. It was a stroke of luck because it blew the hell out of a bunch of hidden scumsuckers waiting in ambush. I spun the M249 around and cleaned up what was left. We started taking a buttload of fire from both sides of the river and the bridges. The pilot juked the SURV around like a drunk trying to walk home from a bar at night. I was getting concerned until an AH-1W Super Cobra gunship came down and strafed the shit out of both banks of the river in addition to the bridges. I continued to help with the M249, and together we shut down most of the scumsuckers. The pilot complained, it's about time he showed up. I recognized the number on the AH-1W and asked the pilot, you got a radio you can contact the chopper with? The pilot replied, of course, do you want to talk to him? I answered, affirmative, I know the pilot and I want to give him some shit. He handed me the mic. I keyed it and squawked, shit, it's about time you stopped Rabso, riding around the base screwing off, and did some real work for a change. The Cobra pilot replied, shit if this is who I think it is, I just wasted good ammo. Hell, you didn't even need my help. I teased, so you still Army? I emphasized Army in such a way he knew what I meant. He replied, better than one of Uncle Sam's misguided children. I asked, then what the hell are you doing flying one of our AH-1Ws? Sam replied, something terrible happened to my H-64 Apache and they couldn't fix it. I was sure that Sam was the one who did this something terrible because he loved the AH-1 series choppers and hated the Apache. I laughed and closed with, thanks again, my friend. I owe you a beer. He said, I'll take you up on that if we can ever keep you away from the nurses. By the way, I'm with you until you reach your final destination. I laughed and the SURV pilot asked, who the hell is that? I replied, that's my good friend Sam. We've bailed each other out of some difficult situations in the past. The pilot said, well, it looks like he's going to escort us to the landing point and then continue with you to the hospital. I asked, so what's it like at the landing point? The pilot said, there's still a hell of a battle going on for the hospital, so it's going to be bad. You're going to have to break through enemy lines and then hope you don't get shot in the butt getting to the hospital. I felt better knowing Sam was around and figured he would clear a path to the hospital for me. Flashback, Jack, office work. I finished off lunch and went back to work. I cleared up the first pile of folders and Colonel Maggie praised my work. Damn, I might have to keep you as my aide. I pretended to be horrified and deprive Ben of my excellent spotting. Colonel Maggie laughed and replied, Jack, you and I both know that Ben is so good, he doesn't really need a spotter. I countered, ma'am, I do other things besides spotting for him. I help to keep him out of trouble and from making bad decisions. Colonel Maggie laughed and said, don't worry, Jack, I was just yanking your chain. But remember, after this week, you're going to be training the Green Marines. I sighed. Yeah, I remember. Colonel Maggie scolded, Jack Reynolds, get your head out of your butt. You're perfect to train the new Marines. If you don't believe me, just look at how well Sergeant Blaine turned out. Hell, if you weren't so dead set against it, you would be a drill instructor by now. I laughed and said, no way. I'm not ever going to wear one of those stupid campaign hats. Colonel Maggie laughed. I think you would look great in a campaign hat. Besides, you are getting a little old to be out in the field. Colonel Maggie worried me with her last comment. Hell, what if she was serious? She began to laugh, and I felt better until she said, damn, Jack, I've got the perfect corporal to be your aide. I didn't like the sound of her laughter at all, so I asked, so, who is it? Colonel Maggie continued, well, he's a bit more than a corporal. He's an E5, Sergeant. I gave her a jaded look, and she continued with the laughter. I'm going to make the old cook your aide. I started to complain, but Colonel Maggie held up her hand and said, Jack, it's going to be great. I want you to give this scumsucker so much shit he hates the day he was born. Hell, run is but ragged all day and night. I asked, I suppose I don't have a say in this. Colonel Maggie laughed, you supposed right. I had one more hope, What about when Ben comes back since they are the same rank? Colonel Maggie said, we will deal with that when it happens, but get used to it, Jack. Starting tonight, he's your new aide. Flashback. Masha, that evening. We sat at the table. Louise helped with the plates and silverware while Gwen remarked, something smells wonderful? Louise said, we're having Yankee pot roast tonight. But more important than that, Linda called me Mama today when I came home. There were congratulations all the way around, especially for me teaching her so well. Once again, Brenda asked, Masha, couldn't you watch our children too? I smiled at her and declined. Sorry, but with Louise moving in, I'm not going to have as much free time, and I know I need to reserve some free time for myself. I distracted them from further asking by setting the roast pan on a trivet on the table and opening the lid. There was a chorus of ahs, and Louise remarked, I still don't understand how Masha can watch Linda all day and still make a meal like this. Gwen asked, what about food for the children? I replied, I almost forgot. They are eating our food. I grabbed the blender container off the counter and put a mixture of vegetables and meat in it. I then walked over to the blender base and pureed the food. I came back, put a little on some small plastic plates for the children, and said, let's see how they like this. Linda was doing her best to eat as Louise helped her. The other two children weren't so sure about the food. Louise informed her friends. Masha discovered that the main ingredient in most baby food is water and felt we were paying a high price for water. She said this is how they did things in Russia, and I think it's a great idea. Brenda said, Masha, I hate to tell you this, but Tina only eats fruits. I was concerned about this, but hid my concern and replied, there's a full bag of baby food on the counter, and you are welcome to find some fruit for her in there. Louise asked, no wine tonight? I smiled and answered, that's correct. We are doing Tebow, and because of that, we will not have wine. Dinner was over, and I hated watching Tina eating just fruit for dinner. I could no longer tolerate it, so I looked at Brenda and asked, Brenda, aren't you concerned that Tina only eats fruits? It's not a balanced meal. Brenda passed the buck. Yes, I am. But my stupid babysitter started it, and I can't find a way to stop it. I began to think of some possible solutions and changed the subject. Okay, it's time for a workout. Gwen said, after a meal like that, I hope I don't throw up. I had noticed she'd eaten too much, but didn't say anything because she would learn. I replied, well, if you do, then you can clean it up. We all laughed. I took them to the garage and Louise asked, with 3 of us learning, which practice dummies will we use? The children were all in the rolling baby chairs and having great fun in the garage. I had made sure before I ever let Linda into the garage that anything dangerous was out of reach. I replied, Louise, you will use Major Mike as always. Gwen and Brenda will each take opposite sides of the heavy bag. Once I put on the floor strap, I placed the floor strap on the heavy bag so it wouldn't swing, put Brenda on one side, and then spent some time showing her how to punch so she didn't hurt her hand. Then I did the same with Gwen. Louise was ready, so I looked at the women, started the music, and ordered, keep up. 10 minutes later, Gwen's self-assessment came true. She vomited on the garage floor. I stopped the music, handed her a rag, and said, next time you should eat a little less. She cleaned up the mess, and we continued for another 5 minutes. I could see that both Gwen and Brenda were having issues, so I stopped the workout and said, that's all for tonight. Gwen and Brenda actually sat on the floor. They were so tired, and Gwen said, Louise, you weren't lying. This was an incredible workout. Linda rolled up to Louise babbling, Mama, Mama, Mama. Both Brenda and Gwen complimented. Louise, you are so lucky to have Masha. Louise made me blush when she said, yeah, I love my badass aunt. I walked over to Brenda and said, Brenda, I have been thinking about your problem with Tina only eating fruit. I think that I can cure this problem if I watch her for 1 week. But it will only be for 1 week, and you have to promise to throw all the baby food fruit out of your house and never buy any again. Brenda asked, how much will you charge? I dismissively waved my hand and said, nothing. Brenda smiled in obvious relief and said, it's a deal. I looked at Louise and asked, Louise, I need you to go to Brenda's house to make sure she doesn't keep any of the baby food fruit. Louise saluted and said, yes, sir. Brenda looked hurt, so I squatted beside her and said, Brenda, this is for Tina's health, so don't feel badly. Gwen changed the subject and suggested, Masha, you should teach Tebow classes. I smiled and secretly wondered if I could possibly do that to earn some more money for our family. I said, I will consider it. Louise adds, and yoga classes. The women remarked, you do Tebow and yoga? I replied, yes, after a good Tebow workout. I like to finish with yoga to keep my muscles from getting sore. Brenda practically begged, Masha, my muscles are getting sore already. Can we try yoga tonight? I hand both women a rag and say, please clean your bottoms so you do not bring the garage dirt into the house. They both apologized. Sorry, Masha, we didn't think anything about sitting down on the garage floor since it looked so clean. I requested, please do not do it again, And also make sure you sit on a rag tonight if you sit in a dining room chair or on the couch. Since yoga is done in the living room, we headed into the living room and I began the yoga lesson. Flashback, Jennifer, the military academy. Things were crazy here. Parents were coming to the military academy and trying to take their children away, while the police are stopping them from doing it. Colonel Clark left to find Daddy, so I was by myself, and the next thing I knew, a big rock hits me in the head so hard I almost passed out. I turned and noticed one of the fat cows from my room last night. She threatened, "I'm going to make you pay for ruining our school." Despite the headache, I laughed and replied, "The school was ruined the minute they let a lesbo fat cow like you enroll." She picked up another rock and started to throw it at me, but a policeman stopped her. He looked at me and said, "Miss, did you know you're bleeding?" I reached behind me, felt where the rock hit me. When I brought my hand back around, and it was covered in blood. The policeman grabbed the girl and said, "You're under arrest for assault." The lesbo fat cow laughed. "My parents are lawyers, so I will be out before you even get the paperwork done." I wandered over to the fire trucks where a paramedic saw me and asked, "What happened to you?" I said, "One of the girls threw a rock and hit me in the head." He began to treat me and said, "Ms., I hate to tell you this, but we need to get you to the hospital as soon as possible. I'm concerned that the rock has possibly caused a cranial fracture and could have caused a concussion." I argued, "I'm not going anywhere without my father." The paramedic said, "Well, who is your father, and we will find him?" I replied, "General Donaldson." The paramedic called over some other firemen and asked them to find Daddy, while he continued to treat me. Finally, I see Daddy running towards the ambulance. Then, flashback, Alexei, back in his room. There was frantic knocking at my door, and I heard the psychologist yell, "Alexei, let me in before they catch me again." I quickly unlocked the door and viewed the psychologist in an extremely disheveled condition. His clothes were torn and dirty, and he was bleeding from his mouth and several other places. He flew into my room, and I locked the door again. I asked, "Sir, what happened to the orderlies?" The psychologist replied, "Somehow they got into the clinic's supply of LSD, and now they are all hallucinating and angry at me." I further questioned, "What is LSD, and why are they angry at you?" The psychologist answered, "LSD is lysergic acid diethylamide, also known as acid, which is a psychedelic narcotic known for its psychological effects including altered thinking processes, closed and open-eye visuals, synesthesia, an altered sense of time, and spiritual experiences. We kept some here as a treatment for some of our more severe cases. They are angry at me over the whole incident with Chow Mein, and they blame me for that cat killing some of them. I realized now what was in the sleeping pill they adulterated. If the amount of LSD I put in the orderly's coffee did this to them, I realized it would probably have killed me. The logical conclusion was that the orderlies were trying to kill me. I needed to develop a way in which to stop them. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. I slipped into the cave and discovered my sister Mira had freed herself from the restraints and had even started a small fire. I complained, "Mira, you should be resting." Mira replied, "Ira, I feel much better and I knew you would arrive shortly with sustenance. Therefore, I started a small fire on which to cook the aforementioned sustenance." I asked, "Would you prefer Laporte lagomorpha or fish?" Mira finally oculated my bounty and said, "I would like for us to divide them betwixt ourselves and enjoy a veritable feast." I proceeded to clean the fish while Mira put the Laporte lagomorpha on a stick and placed it over the fire. I found enough other sticks for the fish, and we also placed them over the fire. Mira asked, "What is your opinion on the situation with Kostia? Has he abandoned the search for us?" I replied, "We have rendered to Kostia a serious sanguineous olfactory appendage. Given his embarrassment over his failure, he will not easily terminate the search for our corporeal selves." Then Mira provided an insightful idea. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. We took a taxi to Maria's bank and met the realtor. Because I couldn't talk, I signed and Maria interpreted for me. The realtor asked, "Todd, what sort of place are you looking for?" I signed, "A gated community which provides a safe haven from the more undesirable parts of the city. 3 bedrooms, a family room, a nice kitchen, and easy access to public transportation. Do you have anything like that available?" The realtor answered, "I think I know exactly what you have in mind, and one just came on the market. Shall we take my car and look at the place?" We walked toward her car where a large man, obviously a bodyguard, opened the doors for us. She gave him the address, and he began to drive the car. I signed to Maria. The driver is also a bodyguard. Because his jacket is too small, I could see the outline of a pistol under his jacket. Maria signed back, "Yes, it is normal for a woman of importance here to travel with protection." The part of the city we drove through was certainly different than some of the other parts one have seen with Maria and Gail. If I had not known better, I would have sworn we were back in America. We finally arrived at the gate where Maria's bodyguard talked to the security guard, and we were admitted to the complex. We drove up to a small, by American standards, single-family home, and the driver stopped the car. We waited until he opened the doors for us, and before we could walk into the house I signed. Maria, I would like to walk around the outside of the house first. Maria spoke to the realtor, and we walked around the outside of the house. I noticed the reinforced bars on the windows. I looked closely at a window and signed. Are the windows all bulletproof? The realtor replied, yes, they are all bulletproof, but how did you know? I played dumb and signed. The glass looked very thick. I was satisfied with the exterior of the house, so we walked to the front door. The realtor unlocked the steel-reinforced door, rushed into the house, and deactivated the security alarm. She explained, I didn't get the alarm turned off fast enough one time, and I thought I was going to be shot. I signed, and Maria translated. How long did it take security to arrive? She replied, they guarantee a 3-minute response time. So far this place looked great. Gail was signing crazy fast to Maria, but I couldn't understand. I really liked this place, and 2 additional features made it even better. Present, Ben, Jens, and others, a couple months later at the cabin. How time flies when you're having fun. Other than Yasmin and Zarika, we're all back at the cabin. The 2 girls keep having problems with formication, which baffles the clinic doctors. They were shocked at the recovery made by Mira, Alexei, and Safia, but even I am still not totally convinced that Alexei is cured. Jens assures me he is, and I do trust her. The rebuild of the cabin is going great. Since I didn't know about the gold from the jet, Jens explained it to me, so I'm not as concerned about money as I was. Jens playfully pokes me in the side and says, time to wake up for PT, old man. She knows I'm not ticklish, but she's ticklish as hell, so I grab her sides. She begins to fight, but not before I get in a few good tickles. Jens complains, one of these days you're going to make me pee in my pants by tickling me before I get a chance to use the bathroom. Jens dashes into the bathroom. I laugh and answer, don't complain to me. You're the one who started it. Now hurry up, or we will be late for PT. Jens teased, well, if you didn't want that, this morning we'd have more time. I countered, me want that? If I remember correctly, it was you that wanted sex. Jens comes out of the bathroom, smiles and says, that's because you're so damn sexy. Now hurry up, or we will be late for PT. I rush my morning bathroom duties, come out already dressed in a pair of BDUs, and Jens complains, hey, you're already in uniform, and you know I like to watch you dress. I swat her, but as I head out the door and say, last one to PT has to run the obstacle course. We run through the tunnels where I hit the door first, fly outside, and easily beat Jens to the PT field. Jens complains, hey, no fair. I kiss her and say, all is fair in love and war. She laughs, that's okay, I will just have to kick your butt on the obstacle course. Ira and Mira run up as Ira states, today is my turn. Ira begins the PT while we and the rest of the security team try to keep up. Jens breathlessly says, I do like having the twins lead the PT. I chuckle as much as possible while sucking wind and agree, yeah, they're worse than any DIs I ever had. We finish the PT, and now it's time for a run. We all load up our gear as Ira leads the run while Mira drops beside us and remarks, very good job this morning. Jens replies, thanks Mira, how are you feeling? Mira says, I feel fine. I have almost vanquished the belly from the pregnancy. I will be thankful when it is gone because it's a constant reminder of the huge mistake I precipitated. I'm still not used to the new Mira, the Mira who isn't interested in me. I have some concern that it will come back, but Jens assures me it won't. I'm taking the opportunity to daydream because I'm living the life I've always wanted. Suddenly, I see Myra's katana flash out of the saya as she announces, someone approaches. Almost instantly, Ira is back beside us with her katana out when Destiny runs up and says, good morning, girls. It's wise to keep an eye on these two because they have attracted the interest of others. I greet her, good morning, Destiny. I gather this isn't a social call. I hope you can spend some time with us. Destiny shakes her head, her hair rustling like leaves in the wind, and says, Ben, I'm much too busy right now for a social visit. Unfortunately, because of your past military service and the news reports by Samantha Stevens, you've attracted the attention of some very dangerous individuals. Jens, standing beside me and holding my hand, asks, do you mean extremists? Destiny nods. That's correct. There are still threats against you. They've been watching you and are trying to come up with a plan to take action against you and Jens. Mira challenges, over our deceased physiques, they will harm the Blaines. Destiny says, these men are terrible and do not care who they hurt or kill. If they had their way, they would destroy all of you, including your whole cabin and tunnel complex. Jens swears, son of a sea biscuit. Do you know where they are staying? Perhaps we could do a preemptive strike? Destiny disappoints us by saying, unfortunately, I have been unable to determine their dwelling place. Destiny turns and points. However, one is observing you even as we speak. I see the telltale flash from a scope or binoculars and suggest, let's go get the scumsucker. We take off after the scumsucker, but he jumps up and runs away. We reach the top of the hill just in time to see a car, the same car I saw following us at the hospital, speeding away. I ask Destiny, can you pick up their trail? Destiny says, unfortunately, I cannot without an item of their clothing. However, I will be taking your runs with you in the mornings. Ira says, we need to constantly vary our routes and our schedules. I agree. That's right. I'm going to talk with Sheriff Jim and see about getting deputized again so we can legally carry weapons. Mira requests, Mr. Blaine, please see if he will provide the equivalent credentials for my sister and I. I reply, I will check and see, but he's still upset at the two of you, so I'm not sure he will do that. Destiny suggests, with the spotter gone, you can now continue your run. Ira sets a blistering pace that I can barely keep up with. Jens looks at me and says, don't worry, Ben, they aren't going to get us. But I am concerned. Why the hell did this have to happen now? Life is going so well. Present, Samantha, Inga, and Tom, Stacy's places. Liz was correct when she said that rich people don't go to jail. Stacy's lawyers got her off on a temporary insanity plea. This almost never happens to anyone, so I'm not sure that some judges weren't paid under the table. But I sure wasn't going to open an investigation into it. Just knowing that Stacy would be out in another week made me happy. They did let Bill out because he didn't do anything wrong, so all the work continued. The biggest surprise I had was when I came back and a woman named Inga, she did some work with Jennifer and Tom, had talked with the chef, and together they had opened a small restaurant in the brewery, which was almost functional again. She was the waitress and the chef did the rest. It did crazy good business with people lined up around the building to eat and marvel at the progress on the brewery. It was great because since I worked for Stacy, I had priority and could take a seat when one became available without all the standing in line. Vic and I sat at the table and Inga asked, would you like wine with your meal today? This was a change. I was shocked and Inga explains, that's right, you haven't been here since our liquor license came through. Vic replies, none for me since I'm on duty. I ask, what's on the menu for today? Inga smiles and answers, beef bourguignon, I would recommend the house red wine with it. I smile at Inga and reply, just a little bit. I have some work to do this afternoon and I don't want it to affect me. Vic says, I never dreamed I would eat so well in my life. I've had to start working out more so I don't gain weight. I ask, how's your house, and is your family getting settled? Vic says, it's a great house, the perfect size. My wife loves it up here, but is still getting used to the altitude. I remind him, make sure she drinks enough water each day because that's one of the keys to adjusting to this altitude. Vic looks a little worried and asks, Samantha, would it be possible for you to eat dinner with us one night? I smile at Vic and reply, of course I would love to, but being a reporter I can sense there's something else. Vic confesses, Mallory is jealous that I work with you and is sure that we're fooling around. If she could just meet you and see the two of us together, it would really help. I say, just tell me the night. I will be there, and we will dispel all her fears. Inga brings my wine, a cup of coffee for Vic, and 2 plates of beef bourguignon. Vic comments, this looks incredible. Inga smiles and says, it's almost to die for. We watch as Inga's smile disappears when she sees who sits down next. Vic looks at him and says, hey, that's the old fart who almost broke Stacy's nose. Inga walks over to his table where she and the man begin to argue. Inga begins to cry and runs back to the kitchen, and Vic says, I think I need to go and have a talk with the stranger. Damn, I heard Inga the traitor went to work for Stacy Summers. She talked Stacy's chef into opening a snooty restaurant. Hell, it was all the people in Leadville talked about, so I decided to visit it and see if I could make up with Inga. My talk with Inga didn't go as well as I hoped. She ran to the kitchen crying, and a big guy got up from Samantha's table and headed in my direction. The smart thing to do would have been to get up and leave, but hey, I never claimed to be smart. He came up to my table and said, sir, it might be better if you left. I grinned at him and snapped, don't call me sir. I work for a living. He smiles at me and said, special ops from Nam unless I'm wrong. I smile at him and reply, good guess, now it's my turn. Army Spec Ops, someplace in Iraq or one of the stands. He smiled right back at me and said, and you could call me sir because I outrank your butt. Now you and I could mix it up here and bust up the restaurant. Or you could leave and we can remain on speaking terms. I laugh and introduce myself. By the way, my name is Tom and I agree if you do one favor for me. He asks, what's that? I confess, look, I was a jerk and insulted the hell out of Inga. If you could give her this note from me, I would be in your debt. He glares at me and says, can I read the note first? I reply, sure, why the hell not? It's a huge apology to her and an offer to take her on a date. I give him the note, stand up and say, nice meeting you. I didn't get your name. He gruffly replies, my name is Victor, but you can call me sir. I wave and offer, good night, sir. I never did meet an officer I cared for, and I sure as hell didn't care for him. but I was sure he would keep his word and deliver the note. With my mission accomplished, it was time to head back to the cabin and give my report. I arrived back at the cabin and found a hub of excitement. Present, Inga, in the kitchen. Victor comes into the kitchen and says, "Don't worry, Inga. I chased that man away. However, he did ask me to give you this note." I was shocked to see Tom, and even more shocked that he wrote me a note. I opened the folded paper and read, "Inga, I need to apologize to you. I was a real horse's shit when we were last together. I can't help but feeling that you're too young for me. However, I am willing to give it a try if you are. Let me know if you would like to get a cup of coffee sometime." Tom. Shoot, just when things were going well, Tom shows up again and messes up my life. But he did apologize and I still have some feelings for him. Present, Ben, Jens, and others. That evening, Tom walks into the situation room and asks, "What the hell is going on? It looks like we're preparing for a war." I reply, "In ways we are. I have attracted the attention of some scumsuckers who want to collect on the many fat was on my head. From what we understand, they are willing to do practically anything to get me." Tom notices Jim the sheriff swearing in people and suggests, "Perhaps it would be better if I swore them in as deputy U.S. Marshals?" Jim says, "Yes, if you could do that, it would give them more freedom to operate. While we're talking about it, we'd like the Marshal Service to help get the FBI Domestic Terror Unit involved in this." Tom asks, "How did you get this information?" I reply, "Destiny stopped us during our PT this morning, and we chased one of the scumsuckers who was observing us on our run off my land today." Tom replies, "Let me head out to my car and get some badges." Tom comes back a few minutes later, swears us all in, hands us each a badge, and then instructs us, "Now this doesn't give you the right to go crazy. You still need to operate within the realm of the law." He looks at Mira and Ira and says, "Especially the two of you. I don't want any international incidents here." They both give Tom the most innocent look I have ever seen. It's all I can do to keep from cracking up. They pull Jens to the side and have a huge discussion. Ira and Mira pull me to the side and Ira asks, "Miss Blaine, isn't there something you could do?" I smile at the girls and reply, "Mira and Ira, sorry, but I'm not that sort of witch. I can only use my powers for good." Mira reminds, "But didn't you cause Yasmin's and Zarika's formication?" I reply, "Yes, I did. But that was different. That was sort of a joke I played on them." Ira starts to ask a question and then interrupts. Mr. Blaine is approaching. Ben walks up and asks, "So what are all the secrets you three share?" I smile at Ben and lie a little. "Ben, it's women things. Would you like to know about them?" Ben grimaces and refuses. "No thanks, I'm leaving." He leaves and Ira repeats her question from before. "Ms. Blaine, could you perhaps cause them to have formication?" I think for a moment and reply, "I need to see the person to make it happen." Then I say, "I did see the man today, so I can give it a try, but there is no way of knowing if it worked. I do the spell, but again I have no idea if it will work." Tom takes the podium and announces, "Today I discovered that the rumor of Inga working for Stacy Summers is indeed a fact. She talked Stacy's chef into opening a restaurant at the brewery, and she is the waitress. I tried to make things right with her, but was asked to leave by Samantha's bodyguard." I ask, "Tom, how does this impact the SIFs?" Tom answers, "We all sign NDAs when we join the SIFs, so I think we should be fine because I feel Inga will honor that agreement." I order Gretchen, "Please remove Inga's access to the tunnels." Gretchen says, "I already put her access on hold. Now I will delete her from the system." I can tell she's not finished when she suggests, "Jennifer, it would be trivial to set up drone surveillance of the cabin and surrounding area." I ask, "Gretchen, is there a way to tie them into a motion detector?" Gretchen replies, "They already have drones with that function built in, so yeah, it's doable. The problem becomes all the animals up here that might interfere with the drone." I reply, "Let's talk later to see if we can figure this out." I look at the security team and inform them, "Even though the doors are monitored by the computer, I want armed guards inside 24 hours a day. Work out the shift to keep both entrances covered." Tom suggests, "Jennifer, we will need some way to verify each employee working on the cabin as they arrive. Otherwise, the scumsuckers could come in as workmen." I ask my security officer, "What would it take to bring the gate blockhouse back online and control the traffic as it enters?" He smiles and says, "Don't worry, we'll start manning the blockhouse after this meeting is finished." I remember the last time the cabin was attacked and pray that it doesn't happen like that again. Then Ben comes up to me and suggests, "Jens, since the scumsuckers are after me, the best thing to do is for me to drop out of sight for a while." I glare at Ben and set him straight. "Ben, there's no way in heck I'm letting you disappear again. Especially since we're finally back together again." I think for a few moments and come up with a plan. Flashback, Ben, on the SURV. The radio squawked and Sam ordered, "Kill your speed. There is some sort of big barrel-looking thing coming down the river toward you. I'm going to blast the hell out of it." The pilot not only killed the speed, he spun the SURV around, so we were headed back in the opposite direction. Sam fired at the barrel, and there was a huge explosion that showered us with nasty river water. The pilot yelled, "Now that's a new trick, a river ID." He spun the SURV around so we were headed the right direction, and Sam calls again. "I'm not sure, but I think that was some sort of ANFO, ammonium nitrate and fuel oil, bomb. You guys are lucky." I grabbed the mic and replied, "Yeah, we are damn lucky you're covering our trip." Sam replied, "Hey, my FLIR, forward-looking infrared, a thermal camera which shows heat signatures, is lit up like a Christmas tree at your landing site, showing multiple scum-suckers. You might want to change landing areas." The pilot grabbed the mic and asked, "How about this beach?" Sam came back, "It's about as clean as anything." The pilot ordered, "Sergeant Blaine, gear up. I want you off of here as soon as we reach the beach." Another Marine manned the M249 while I began to put on my packs and NV goggles. We hit the beach. I jumped up and ran off the SURV as Sam lit up some scum-suckers that were close to me. The SURV was gone almost instantaneously. Well, it looked like other than Sam, I was on my own. I ran and juked like my butt was on the line, because it actually was. Sam followed me and cleaned up most of the scum-suckers. He missed a couple, but I took them down with my M4 and kept running. Thank God I remembered where the hospital was. I reached a location close to the hospital, began to pie the corner while Sam's Super Cobra was raising hell. I slipped around the corner, saw a shitload of scum-suckers, and ducked back behind the corner. When Sam stopped firing, I pied the corner again, and the scum-suckers were gone. I beat feet toward the hospital and yelled, "Friendly incoming." Sam was really putting his chopper through a workout as he started to fire in some other areas. I reached the door to the hospital without getting shot by a Marine. The doors flew open, and I dove inside as some rounds peppered the building. George picked me up and said, "Welcome back." I replied, "Thanks for not shooting me." He laughed. "Colonel Maggie made sure we knew you were coming platoon SGT." I asked, "So what's the sitrep?" George replied, "The scum-suckers must really want this hospital since they keep throwing waves of people at us, and we keep kicking their butts back." I asked for clarification, people meaning not just men? George grimaced and said, "That's right. We've had women and children suicide bombers. The first one practically caught us with our pants down." Then George added, "We've had a hell of a time with a scum-sucker sniper. Whenever we get someone on the roof, he takes them down. You think you can do anything?" I swore, "I can't believe they are using women and children. You bet I can do something about this sniper." George cautions, "He's damn good, so be careful." I dropped the UOP and suggested, "Give this to one of the Marines to keep and tell them to keep their mitts out of it, or I will kick their butt." George motioned to a corporal and said, "You heard the sergeant, you'd better treat this like your girlfriend." George and I began to haul toward the roof. I got to the floor below where the hatch was blown off and Jack was wounded. I stopped, found a stick, placed my helmet on the stick, and made sure to note the helmet's direction on the stick. I slowly raised it up. It barely cleared the edge of the access point when a shot rang out and bounced my helmet off the stick. I caught the helmet and noticed what looked to be a nice .30 caliber hole in the helmet. I asked, "Has the sniper been taking out Marines in the windows?" George replied, "No, he only goes after the ones on the roof." I smiled at George and said, "That's what I hoped you would say." I showed George the hole in my helmet and said, "The hole in my helmet shows me the sniper is on the eastern side of the building, most likely in the highest building in the area." George confirmed, "There is one tall building on that side of the hospital." I suggested, "Look, I can play games with this scum-sucker for days, or we can call in a strike on the building. It's your choice." George laughed and said, "That's an easy decision. We're going to have the artillery level that building. They've been itching for targets." I requested, "Hold off the artillery for a few minutes. I want to get eyes on the building first." George questioned, "Why is that?" I replied, "Because the sniper might take off when he hears the artillery fire. I know I sure as hell would." I found a good room on the eastern side of the building and crawled into it, so I didn't expose myself. I pulled out my sniper rifle, mounted a thermal scope in front of my regular scope, and began to scan the roof of the tall building. With the thermal scope, I was able to follow the sniper's footsteps to his hidey hole. The scum-sucker had removed an air vent cover and was inside the vent. Hell, I could even see his hands where he touched the air vent, and of course I could see his thermal image in my scope. I pulled out a laser rangefinder, ranged the air vent, checked for wind, which was almost non-existent, made the scope adjustments, and took the shot. The thermal scope showed me the red mist as my bullet ripped the sniper to hell. I stood up, walked out of the room, and reported to George, "One less sniper to worry about." George asked, "Well, should we still level the building?" I replied, "Most certainly. Not just that building, but any other building that is close to the height of our building." George and I moved into what looked to be his office. He pulled out a map and used a red LED light to scan the map. He pointed and said, "These buildings are the tallest in the area." I suggested, "Let's give the Marines and artillery some work to do. Take them all down at once." George made a list of the coordinates of the buildings and asked, Ben, check this for me. I checked the coordinates. They were all spot on and suggested, have them put some flares up first, then drop in a round on each building. Give them the azimuth changes based on where they hit, and then fire for effect. George offered, Ben, would you like the honors? I replied, no sir. Once we begin the fire mission, my guess is the scumsuckers will be swarming from the buildings like cockroaches. I'm taking part of the squad with me, and we're going to send them to hell. I looked around and ordered, you 5 are with me on the roof. One of them balked. I ain't going on the roof, it's a death trap. George started to dress him down, but I looked at George and said, sir, please, this is my job. I walked over to the corporal and ordered, Corporal, your sergeant is commanding you to stand up. The corporal stood up and did something he shouldn't have. He mouthed off, yes sir, sergeant. What you going to do to me? I grinned at him and answered, I'm new here, so let me introduce myself. Most Marines call me Ben. And do you see my left foot? He looked down at my left foot, nodded yes, and I continued, I'm going to put my left foot against the right side of your face, and you won't be able to do anything about it. He dropped back into a defensive position and began to argue. I did a spinning kick. My left foot connected with the right side of his face, and he went out like a light while blood spurted out of his nose. I looked at the corporal with the UOP and ordered, take care of his nose, but don't screw up the pack doing it. He saluted like crazy and said, yes SGT. I looked at the other Marines and lectured, I'm your new platoon sergeant, you may call me Sergeant or Ben. It's up to you. However, you will never call me sir. That title is reserved for our lieutenant. Know that I will never put you in harm's way or ask you to do anything I won't do myself. If you have a problem with me or my command, then come and see me. If we can't rectify it, then we take it to the lieutenant. That fired them up. They all jumped up and wanted to head to the roof, so I ordered, I only want the 5 best shots with me. The rest of you can continue to protect the building. A chorus of yes, sergeant was heard as the 5 supposed best shots followed me to the roof. I walked right up on the roof, and the others hesitated some until they saw that I didn't get shot. They got on the roof, and I ordered, things are probably going to get hot and heavy here very soon. The lieutenant is calling in a fire mission to destroy all the tall buildings in this area. When it starts, I expect the scumsuckers will be running out of the buildings like swarming cockroaches. Since you 5 are the best shooters, we're going to kill as many of them as we can. The artillery launched the flares which made the area look like daylight. I took the additional thermal scope off my sniper rifle, packed it away, and waited. Flashback, Jack, office work. Colonel Maggie was on the phone, hung up, and said, damn Jack, that's one hell of Marine you trained in Sergeant Blank. I was a little worried when I asked, what did he do now? Colonel Maggie laughed. First, he made it safely back to the hospital, which was a huge task in itself. Then he kicked the butt of a corporal who mouthed off to him, killed a sniper that had been controlling the roof of the hospital, and now he has the lieutenant calling in a fire mission on all the high buildings around the hospital. Yes, you did a damn good job training him. I looked sad and Colonel Maggie asked, Sergeant Reynolds, what's wrong? I replied, sorry sir, I just missed the action. She tried to cheer me up by saying, don't worry, you will have some action tonight when you get your new aide. I expect his life to become the hell he's given this camp with his sorry excuse for cooking. I half-heartedly answered, yes sir, I will make sure his life is hell. And I thought, I'm going to make his life as miserable as my life is, since the only thing worse than office work was what Colonel Maggie threatened me with earlier, latrine duty. Damn Ben is once again getting all the fun, and I'm stuck here with these damn folders. That gave me an idea for tomorrow. Flashback, Masha, later that evening. Louise and I were in bed, and she informed me, Michael agreed to help move my things in here this weekend. Can you watch Linda while I move? I smiled and agreed, certainly, that's no problem at all. Louise asked, how do you plan on stopping Tina from only eating fruit? I replied, the only way I know how is by not giving her any fruit. She will eventually get hungry enough to eat good food. However, it's not going to be stress-free and certainly not easy to view. Louise sparked my concern when she said, Brenda says that Tina is very strong-willed. I found out exactly how strong-willed the next day. Flashback, Jennifer, the hospital. I woke up with a terrible headache and found Daddy and Mother were both standing by my bed. I figured I must be dreaming, so I started to roll over, and Daddy said, Jennifer, you gave us quite a scare. Mother added, yes, young lady, we have been worried senseless about you. I asked, Mother, is that really you? Are you back? She smiled at me and said, yes, Jennifer, I'm back and things are settled with Daniela. We're keeping her to do the housework while I concentrate on other things like managing your dancing career. I sure as heck didn't like the sound of that, but I didn't say anything. I reached back, felt a bandage on my back of my head, and asked, what happened? Daddy smiled at me and said, Jennifer, that girl who threw the rock at you did more damage than the paramedic originally thought. She caused you to have a subdural hematoma. The base surgeons were able to successfully fix the problem. A doctor walked into my room and interrupted. Jennifer, how do you feel? I tried to smile and said, like I was run over by a car. He checked my chart and said, Jennifer, we did a burr-hole trephination on your subdural hematoma. That's where we drill a hole in your head and suck out the blood that created the hematoma. We feel it was very successful and you should recover with no problems. I asked, can I sit up in bed and can I have my laptop computer? The doctor said, we want to keep you flat for the rest of the day because sometimes if you sit up too early you get a terrible headache. He checked my eyes with a flashlight, then asked me a bunch of stupid questions to which of course I knew the answers. He said, Jennifer, your progress is great, keep it up. He left and Daddy said, don't worry Jennifer, the girl who assaulted you was arrested. I complained, Daddy, that might not be the best thing since she said her parents were lawyers. That made me remember something, so I asked, Daddy, what's going on about the military academy? Daddy looked down and Mother said, Jennifer, that was a terrible place. Most of the girls were forced to do terrible sexual things to each other. Not only that, the nasty girl who hit you with the rock was one of the ringleaders. I asked, what about Rachel, the girl who helped me? Daddy said, Jennifer, I have no idea about her. However, I will find out. By the way, the newspapers are calling you a hero for causing the closing of the academy. I felt really tired and said, I think I'm going to take a nap. Daddy kissed me on the cheek, so did Mother. I drifted off to sleep and had a terrible dream. Flashback, Alexei, back in his room. The psychologist paced in front of the door. He was very nervous and it was bothering me. I decided to medicate him to calm him down. I still had the powder from the red pill of mine, so I mixed it into some water in a glass and asked, Sir, would you like some water? He replied, Thank you, Alexei, that is very thoughtful of you. He drank the offered adulterated water without even tasting it, a bad habit of his. This gave me a great idea. With chow mein gone, I would continue my experiments on the orderlies. Not only did I have a large amount of my pills in my stash, I knew I had access to many more exotic narcotics because the narcotics were not well controlled here. The psychologist began to yawn and said, I'm getting sleepy. Alexei, do you mind if I use your bed? I said, No, sir. You have had a busy and stressful time. Feel free to take a nap. He lay on my bed and almost instantly fell to sleep. I briefly thought about letting the orderlies in to get him, but decided I would perform some experiments on him. I took 2 of the green pills out of my stash because I remembered how crazy they made chow mein, mixed them in some water, and then slowly dribbled the water into his open mouth. It worked perfectly as he began to swallow the mixture. It took about 30 minutes, but he jumped from the bed and swore, This is my clinic. What the hell am I doing letting the orderlies trap me in this room? With that, the psychologist threw open the door and loudly swore, You sons of a bitches aren't going to make me hide. I was amazed and shocked when he began attacking the orderlies. The next thing I knew, the orderlies were running down the hallway, screaming in terror with the psychologist chasing them. I locked my door, pulled out my notebook, and documented what happened. This was going to be so much better than using chow mein. Flashback, Mira and Ira, continuing. I looked at Ira and suggested, I grow tired of Kostia and his men chasing us. It is time that we take the fight to them. We have already terminated many of his men, so if we are wise and plan intelligently, we can terminate all of them. Ira smiled and said, Mira, once again you are correct. The men we have previously terminated were not very skilled, and my thoughts are that many of the remaining are likewise trained. I continued, First I need to finish my sustenance, then we need to cauterize my wound. Ira asked, Exactly when and how did you receive that wound? I replied, When the first rocket hit the chopper, I was not lucky and a piece of it embedded itself into my abdomen. Ira scolded, Mira, you should have informed me immediately. I extruded my tongue out at her and stated, That would have prevented our escape, which at the time was of greater importance. Mira had finished her sustenance, so I advised, The time has arrived to cauterize your wound. I took the knife, heated the blade in the fire, stripped off Mira's shirt, and pressed the flat side of the knife against her wound. Mira gasped, and then her consciousness departed. I was then able to further the cauterization. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. What really sold me on this house was when the realtor showed me the safe room. It was virtually impregnable. I kept watching Gail's crazy fast signing and was getting better at reading it. She was giving Maria hell about not sleeping with me. She even went as far to say that if Maria didn't do her duty, she was going to do it. Yeah, she wanted this place even more than I did. Especially after the realtor said, if you have any children, they will attend the school that's on premises. It's ranked as the best school in the city. I needed to play this cool, so I finally got Gail to shut up with her signing and signed. I noticed some stains on the carpet in the living room. What happened to the previous owners? The realtor looked down and said, I hoped you wouldn't ask that since they were killed by a man they believed was their friend. I turned to Maria and signed so she and Gail could both see. Let this be a lesson to the both of you. You're only as safe as the people you trust. If you let someone bad into this house, bad things will happen. The realtor and I began negotiations. The first question she asked was, do you want the house as is, with the furniture, or should I arrange for the furniture to be sold? I signed and Maria translated. The furniture in the living room is great, and we will keep it. I do want the furniture changed in the master bedroom and one of the extra bedrooms. I have particular preferences in cooking utensils, so everything in the kitchen can be sold. The realtor made some notes and said, here's the best price I can give you on this house. She slid a note across the table. I took one look at it, crumpled it up, threw it on the floor, and signed. Are you trying to offend me? I did some research and know the prices for houses here, and that price is much too high. It was a lie, but she didn't know. The realtor quickly backed down. No, sir. I'm not trying to offend you, but that is a good price for this house. I looked at Maria and Gail and signed. It's over. We're leaving, and I want a new realtor. I stand up, and Maria translates. The realtor responds, please be reasonable. I give her a very angry look and sign. Why should I be reasonable when you're trying to screw me without even kissing me? Gail giggled at the comment, and Maria changed the translation to something more respectable. I signed. I will give you one more chance. You can sell this house to me tonight at my price, or you can let it remain on the market for however many years it takes to sell. The realtor said, please sit back down and tell me your price. I sat back down, pulled out my pad, and wrote out what I considered a ridiculously low price. I pushed it over to the realtor, and she shocked me when she smiled and said, Todd, you just bought yourself a house. Gail jumped up and down and danced around the room. The realtor asked, why is she so happy? I signed and Maria translated, because Maria and Gail are going to be the caretakers of this house while I'm traveling for business. The realtor smiled and said, that's an excellent idea, especially if you're gone often or for an extended time. I asked, how much deposit do you need tonight? The realtor told me, so I pulled out the cash and signed. Of course I need a receipt for this. She gave me a receipt, handed me the keys to the house, and said, I will be back tomorrow morning at 10 with the contract. I motioned to the realtor to come beside me. I pulled out my pad and wrote, should anything happen to me, I want this house to become Maria's property. Make sure that is in the contract. The realtor smiled at me and assured me it would be taken care of. I looked at Gail and she signed. Todd, can we stay here tonight? I signed. That's a great idea. What do you think, Maria? Gail began her crazy fast signing, telling Maria to sleep with me, and Maria relented. I guess that would be fine. But tomorrow we need to go back to our apartment and collect our belongings. I signed. I don't know about you, but I'm tired and want some sleep. Gail, choose which room you would like. Maria, you choose which room you would like, and I will sleep in the last room. Maria blinks her eyes and said, you're not sleeping with me? Mama laughed and signed. That's right, and I'm also not sleeping with Gail. Listen, I don't know what sort of men you've come across in the past, but I didn't buy this house so I could sleep with either of you. In fact, I'm locking my door tonight because Gail has me scared. Maria laughed and said, Todd, you're getting better at understanding Gail. I signed, that's right, which made Gail blush like crazy as we went upstairs to our individual rooms. And I did lock the door because I was worried about Gail. Present, Jens, Ben, and others, the plan. I pull Ben to the side and suggest, Ben, I have a great plan that should work. Ben still argues. Jens, the only logical thing is for me to leave. I interrupt his crazy thought with a kiss, pull away and protest. Ben, you're not thinking correctly. Even if you leave, the cabin and I will still be a target. Then I lay out my plan. So, we're both going to leave. We'll rent or buy a motor home, fill it with weapons, and leave like we're going to Disneyland. And since the terrors seem to monitor Samantha's reports, we will get her to do a big report on it. Ben gets with the plan when he thinks out loud. I wonder if we can get a motorhome like they had on the movie Stripes. I giggle and ask, was that the motorhome that was more of a tank than anything else? Ben smiles and responds, yeah, that's the one. I wonder if they make any armored motorhomes. Tom walks over and interrupts. I couldn't help but overhear your discussion. I think it's a great plan, and I have a suggestion which might make it better. I reply, well, Tom, don't leave us hanging. What is it? Tom says, don't waste your time trying to find an armored motorhome. I will talk to Tsifs and we will get you an armored trailer and semi to pull it. But first, rent a normal motorhome and have Samantha do a video of you leaving in it. We will make the switch to the Tsifs asset later when we're sure we're not being watched. In fact, I will even make sure it's disguised as a normal semi-trailer. Ben asks, how hard are those to drive? And won't I need a CDL? Tom says, the corners are the tricky part because it's easy to cut them too close and run into shit. But hell, It's armored, and if you do that, you will just tear the hell out of whatever you run into while scratching the paint on the trailer. Oh yeah, backing up is a real bitch, so always try to pull into places where you don't need to back up. Yeah, you'll both need CDLs, but we can get you 2 CDLs with no problems. I ask, I know most of them are set up as mobile command centers. Do you have one that's more like a house? Tom replies, Jennifer, they are modular, so all we need to do is tell the CIFs what you need, and they will configure it. Ben asks a very practical question. Just how armored are they? Tom replies, they will withstand any rifle rounds, including a .50 caliber. Shit, they will even take a hit from an RPG without a problem as long as it's not the wheels that are hit. Of course, Ben has to ask, so what happens if the wheels are hit? Tom replies, the trailer either tips over or you drag it until it's stuck. But unless someone talks, no one will know where you are. I ask, who's going to make sure the cabin is built and stays secure from any threats? Tom offers, Jennifer and Ben. If you'd let me stay here, I'll gladly take care of that for you. I just need all the details first. The second issue is that you two are very recognizable. I look at Ben, and he says, Tom has been a shitload of help since I've been back. I can't believe all he's done. The semi from the CIFs is a great idea, but I'm just not sure I can drive one of those rigs. I look at Tom and say, Tom, I'm not sure I want Jens and me to be the only drivers, and I'm also not sure what to do about disguising ourselves. Tom smiles and says, getting a couple drivers for you will be no problem at all. And Ben, if I remember right, don't you have a couple of extra passports? Jens giggles and says, I know about a rast frickin' Fandrin. But who is the other one? Ben smiles and answers, Paulo Roberto Fernandez. The light bulb appears above her head as Jens finally realizes, Ben, you rented the campground in Glacier National Park under a Rast Petrovich Fandrin because you wanted me to find you. Ben smiles at me and says, of course I did. Don't tell me you're having a blonde moment. I giggle and say, I guess I never thought about it until now. Jens pauses and suggests, Ben, I think I might have just had another blonde moment. Why don't we take that trip to Russia to get your elbow fixed? Tom shoots down my new blonde moment by saying, unless the surgery is life-threatening, I sure as hell wouldn't go to Russia. Think for a moment about all the Chechen terrors blowing the hell out of everything. Ben interjects, Tom's right. I had a huge run-in with them when I was there. I can't resist teasing Ben, so I smile and ask him, was the huge run-in's name Tatiana? Ben blushes, but I save him. Don't worry, my love. I have forgiven you for all your past indiscretions. Mira and Ira walk over and Ira orders, you are not traveling anywhere absent our participation. Mira reinforces the order, that is correct. We are your personal protectors, and any travel plans must include us. Tom gives them a strange look, but then says, you know, with the right clothes and hairstyles, they could almost pass as your daughters. Jens heatedly complains, Tom, are you saying I look old enough to be their mother? Realizing the quicksand which confronts him, Tom quickly backpedals, no, I was just thinking out loud and you're right, it's crazy. Tom continues, now let's go over the configuration you will need. Present, Bill, Samantha, and Inga, Stacy's place. Bill walks up and teases, I should have known I would find you 2 chow hounds here. Vic laughs and responds, like hell, we know you actually came here for a plate of your own. Let me go get Inga for you. Vic leaves to get Inga, and Bill asks, where's Inga? I reply, the old guy who almost broke Stacy's nose came in the restaurant. They talked, and Inga ran crying to the kitchen. Bill swears, damn, how did he get in here? I need to have a talk with the rest of my security team and ban him from this building. Vic and Inga walk out of the kitchen, and Inga sets down a plate of beef bourguignon and apologizes, sorry about that. I needed to powder my nose. Bill says, like hell you did. I heard what really happened, and I will make sure he never comes in here again. Inga bites her lip and pleads, Bill, please relax about this. Believe it or not, I still might want to see him. Bill whines, women, who can understand them? I say, I understand us perfectly. Then I look at Inga and ask, don't you understand us? Inga laughs and agrees, of course I do, and the process is rather simple. I wonder what their problem is. Bill finally notices my whine and says, all right, the liquor license finally came through. Then he says, Samantha, when you're finished eating, I would like to go over the plans for your castle and the new offices. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. All I know is that I've spent what seems like too much money on my castle. I remember that Stacy told me to be frugal, but the remodeling seems to be costing a small fortune. I smile at Bill and suggest, well, I'm done. If I eat any more, I will have to exercise even more. How about we head up to the new offices and look at the plans? Bill says, I'm not leaving until I finish this excellent meal. He looks at Inga and praises her. Inga, it was a really good thing you've done here with the chef. Stacy has given her utmost approval. Inga smiles and answers, thanks, Bill. That means so much coming from you and Stacy. She gets out next week, doesn't she? Bill replies, that's right. I can't wait to have her back. I praise his actions. Bill, you've done a great job keeping things going while she's been gone. How is she concerning Ben and Jennifer? Bill shakes his head slightly and says, she's still obsessed with Ben and I don't understand it. She could have any man in the world and she wants him. But she knows she needs to play the game and lie low if she wants out. That worries me some since the last thing I want is another incident like her trying to shoot Ben. My mobile phone rings. I answer it and say, yes, I can be there later this afternoon. I have a couple of other things to do first. Vic asks, are we going somewhere? I reply, Ben and Jennifer are leaving in a motorhome later today for Disneyland and asked if I would do a story on it. Bill exclaims, damn, that's great news. If Ben and Jennifer are gone, they won't be here to aggravate Stacy. He looks at me and Inga and asks, do either of you know how to keep her from obsessing on Ben? I suggest, Bill, we need to keep her mind occupied with other things and remove any reminders of Ben's presence. Inga agrees. We also have to help her realize that Ben legally married Jennifer because he loves her. Bill says, unfortunately, Stacy is used to getting whatever she wants, so how do we convince her of these facts? I look at Inga. She looks at me, and we both answer. We don't have any idea other than keeping her busy. Bill replies, well, there's certainly enough work available so that we can do that. He pushes his plate back and says, damn, that was good. Are you ready to go over the plans now, Samantha? I reply affirmatively, and we begin to head up the hill. Vic begins to follow, and Bill orders, Vic, I want you to mind the store here and make sure we don't have any further problems. I'll make sure to keep Samantha safe. Vic sits back down and asks, hey Inga, how about another cup of coffee? She gladly brings him a cup, and he wonders, now what did those two need to discuss without me? Inga says, I think they are discussing you working for the Truth Network and not Stacy. Vic replies, yeah, I know it bothers them some, but my primary mission is still the safety of Ms. Stevens, no matter who pays the bills. I tell Vic, you need to relay that to Bill and Samantha. I am sure they have their doubts. Vic swears, hell, the offer was so good I couldn't turn it down. Inga reminds him, Vic, you didn't even have a chance to hear Stacy's offer. It might have been better. Vic confesses, yes, it seemed like I took the first offer that seemed the best for my family. I suggest, be open to other offers that Stacy might give you. Vic assured me he would. I said, I need to clean this table as we have other guests waiting. I clean the table and 3 men walk into the restaurant, and I immediately dislike them. They take the clean table, and one of them asks with a heavy accent, do you have any vegetarian food? I reply, we only make 1 meal a day, and today's meal is beef bourguignon. So sorry, we don't have any vegetarian food today. The man says, perhaps you could bring us some very strong coffee. I smile and answer, right away. I couldn't wait to get away from them because they gave me the heebie-jeebies, especially the one who kept scratching himself like he had fleas or something. I notice Vic watching them. He stands up and begins to walk toward them, and they abruptly stand up and leave. I walk over to him and comment, that was strange. Vic says, strange hell? If I'm not mistaken, those were some terrors. I'm heading up the hill to make sure that Samantha is safe. Present, Bill and Samantha, on the way to Stacy's new offices. We get away from the restaurant, and I ask, okay, Bill, what's going on? Bill says, we have some concerns about Vic working for the Truth Network. I inquire, we meaning you and Stacy? Well, you can tell Stacy that Vic is loyal to me, not to the Truth Network. We hear some footsteps behind us. Bill turns, sees who is following us, pulls his weapon and commands, that's close enough. Now state your intentions. I notice Vic slips up behind them as one of them announces, we are fans of Samantha Stevens and wish to meet her. Bill says, sorry, Miss Stevens is currently busy. You need to schedule an appointment to see her. One of them was scratching like crazy, then he reaches inside his coat. Vic shoots him, and the others take off running while Vic commands, Bill, get her the hell inside. I think this scumsucker is wearing a suicide vest. Bill grabs my arm, and we run up the hill to the new offices while Vic moves toward the dead man. Vic begins to remove the outer cloak of the dead man, and Bill says, shit, he was right. Look at the vest he's wearing. Shit, we need someone well-versed in ordnance disposal to take care of this. After again glancing at the dead terror, Bill remarks, what the hell is she doing? I watch as Inga has come out of the restaurant, sees what's going on, and motions Vic away. Vic backs up. Inga kneels beside the dead man and begins to examine the vest. She stands up, sees us, runs up the hill, and announces, Bill, this vest is practically a work of art. Vic was lucky he didn't detonate it when he shot the terror. It's beyond my capabilities to remove it. I would suggest you call the sheriff and get someone from CBI here to handle this. We do need to establish a large perimeter around the terror to keep everyone safe. Bill calls the sheriff, and they have a heated conversation. He hangs up the phone and says, the sheriff will be here soon, but he won't call the CBI until he sees the terror for himself. I gulp and ask, was I the target of the terror? Vic has joined us and says, that's an affirmative. Bill agrees. Yes, you were. We are lucky we left the restaurant, otherwise he probably would have detonated it in there. I question, but I've never done any reports about terrors. Why would they be after me? Vic replies, you never know. Just because you're a young, successful woman is reason enough for them. You can now do a report about this terror since we can even use the security feeds from the restaurant to possibly identify the other two. Sheriff Jim arrives at the brewery and runs up the hill. Bill meets him before he gets too close and says, just take a look and then get on the horn to the CBI. Jim sees the suicide vest and begins to call the CBI when we hear an explosion. Bill says, that looks like it's in the direction of the Blaine's cabin. Flashback, Ben, back at the formerly captured hospital. George joined us on the roof along with the radio operator. We didn't have to wait long. As the first rounds fell, George called in the azimuth changes and ordered, fire for effect. My hunch was correct. Scumsuckers flew out of the building like cockroaches, and we shot the scumsuckers. The other Marines were damn good shots. They were only hindered by the limited range of their M4s. That was a problem I didn't have with my sniper rifle. George came over and remarked, damn Ben, I wish we had some longer range weapons for our shooters. I suggested, when we get back to the base, let me talk to the armorer and see if I can come up with some of the SEAL M25s for our better shooters. George asked as I took out another scumsucker, what will that do? I replied, it's based on a match-grade M14, so it fires the 7.62x51 round. That should get the better of the shooters out to at least 1,000 yards. It's what Jack uses. The only problem is you have to carry the ammo for it, and it's heavier than hell. George correctly analyzed. Well, the scumsuckers seem to understand the range limitations of our M4s, so they stay just outside our range and fire at us. I laughed. A hell of a lot of good it does for them to fire at us from that range since they are just wasting ammo, which is good for us. The final building fell under the onslaught of the artillery, and they called and asked for more targets. George responded, sorry, but there's nothing more right now. I suggested, George, we should get a squad and go check the buildings for unexploded ordnance. George thought for a moment and recognized the problem. Yes, that way the scumsuckers can't use it to make IEDs. He continued, is that something you would lead? I replied, no, George, I'm better used sitting up here with my sniper rifle and covering them. I would also like to keep my 5 other men up here because they're above average shots. Whoever leads it needs to stay on the comm and bug out if we call them. George said, I'm going to call in to Colonel Maggie and let her know how the fire mission went. I will also request the M25s and ammo from her. Is there anything else you would like? I scanned the area and suggested, see if she can come up with AM-107 and a shitload of ammo for it. George asked, that's the 50 caliber Barrett, isn't it? I smiled at him and said, that's right. If we can get one of those, the scumsuckers are in for a big surprise. Hell, I can fire right through the walls and kill the scumsuckers. One of the other Marines interrupts, child running toward the hospital. I moved to his side of the building, set up my rifle, looked through the scope and saw a girl that couldn't be much older than 12 running toward the building wearing a suicide vest. I swore, those scumsuckers, using young girls. George leaned over and whispered an order, Ben, take the shot. She volunteered to be a suicide bomber to escape being almost continually assaulted. Please put her out of her misery. That made doing what I needed to do easier, however I still didn't like it. I fired. Her vest detonated and she was gone. I asked George, tell me more about this. George whispered a reply. The scumsuckers captured a large number of Christian people. They tortured all the men and killed them. They feel the Quran gives them the right to take the women and assault them as long as they don't get pregnant. So they assault them all the time, then make sure they take birth control pills each day. I had never heard of this, so I asked, where the hell did you hear this? He leaned over and whispered, it was in an officer's briefing. I thought about it and commented, they didn't tell all of us because they were concerned about how the men would react. George affirmed, that's correct, so you can't tell anyone. This was something I wasn't sure I could keep hidden from the men, especially the ones who were forced to kill a child suicide bomber. George sent the team out to check for unexploded ordnance, then called Colonel Maggie with the report. Night was coming soon, so I made sure to assign watch for the night. To prove I wasn't bullshitting, I took one of the first watches. Flashback, Jack, office work. Colonel Maggie got another phone call. I could tell it was from George the Butterbar, so I kibitzed on the conversation. Colonel Maggie noticed me and said, hell, I might as well put this on speaker. She put it on the speakerphone, and then she ordered, Lieutenant, Sergeant Reynolds is listening now, so please repeat what you just reported. The lieutenant repeated, sir, the fire mission was a total success. All the tall buildings have been decimated and many insurgents killed with rifle fire from the roof as they ran from the buildings. Sir, we found that the M4s lack the range we need, so we are requesting 4 or 5 M25s with ammo and magazines for them. I made a fist and shoved it into the air. Colonel Maggie said, "It would appear that Sergeant Reynolds agrees with you on the request. I will see what I can do." The lieutenant continued, "Sergeant Blaine also requested AM-107 with, and these are his words, a shitload of ammo." Colonel Maggie said, "1 minute, Lieutenant." Colonel Maggie looked at me and asked, "Sergeant Reynolds, what is Sergeant Blaine thinking?" I thought for a moment and replied, "Ben must have some hardened targets that he wants to deal with." The lieutenant confirmed, "That's what Sergeant Blaine said." Colonel Maggie asked, "Anything else?" It took a moment, then the lieutenant added, "Yeah, we need a new helmet for Sergeant Blaine. His was shot by the sniper." Colonel Maggie said, "I will get moving on this ASAP. Good job holding the hospital. There is no need to tell you that this is now a major priority. Make sure the roof is clear, and we will come in with a Black Hawk and unload on the roof." Colonel Maggie hung up the phone, looked at me and swore, "Sergeant Blaine needs a new helmet because the sniper shot it." "What the hell?" I interrupted. "Colonel Maggie, I'm almost positive that Ben used his helmet as a decoy to locate the other sniper, so don't worry about it." Colonel Maggie continued to swear, "Someday that sergeant is going to give me a coronary." Colonel Maggie's aide walked into the office. She handed him the list of supplies the lieutenant requested and ordered, "I don't care what you have to do, trade or promise to make this happen and get it to the hospital ASAP." He replied, "Sir, Sergeant Reynolds' aide is waiting outside." The colonel ordered, "Send him in." He slouched into the office and I immediately disliked him. Hell, he was fat and didn't look like a Marine. He saluted and said in a mouse of voice, "Sir, you requested to see me again. Please don't lecture me on the food again. I will do better." Colonel Maggie smiled at him and said, "The hell you will do better? You have been relieved of your job as cook." He asked, "Then what will the men do for food?" Colonel Maggie answered, "Until our new cook arrives, we will all eat MREs." He complained, but, then what am I going to do?" Colonel Maggie smiled, pointed at me, and ordered, "John, your new assignment is to be Sergeant Reynolds' aide. You will do whatever he orders. Then Monday you will start training with the new incoming Marines." John had the audacity to complain, "But sir." Colonel Maggie nipped it in the bud with a threat. "John, you either do as ordered or you will be reassigned to Thule." John apologized. "Sorry, ma'am, it's just I never fought before and can barely shoot a rifle." I had my fill of John and barked, "John, all Marines, including Colonel Maggie and even General Donaldson, are first and foremost riflemen. If you are not now a rifleman, you will be soon. Now leave this office so I can talk to the colonel in private." He made a mistake when he replied, "Yes, sir." I kicked him in the butt and barked, "Don't you ever call me a sir. I work for a living." He slouched out of the office and muttered, "I will wait outside SGT." I looked at Colonel Maggie and asked, "Excuse me, sir, but what the hell was that?" Colonel Maggie laughed and said, "Sergeant, that's your new aide. And I would say you have your work cut out for you." I requested, "Sir, if I'm supposed to make him combat ready, I need to start working on him immediately. Permission to begin some light physical training?" Colonel Maggie smiled and said, "Sergeant, permission granted. Know that even if you re-injure yourself, you're still going to train the new recruits." I replied, "I'm not worried about the new recruits, but I'm worried as hell about John." Colonel Maggie gave me a challenge. "Jack, if you train him half as well as you trained Sergeant Blaine, I will make it worth your while." How would another stripe on that arm sound? I thought about how the extra income would help with Masha and replied, "Sir, that's a challenge I accept." I was done for the day and walked out of Colonel Maggie's office. John fell in behind me in his slouch, so I turned and barked, "Sergeant, fix your posture, stand up straight. The next time I see you slouch, you will run laps until you puke." He replied, "Yes, SGT." We walked to my room. I unlocked the door, walked in, and said, "I'm going to make an MRE for dinner." John asked, "Can I have one too?" I asked, "Did you requisition one?" He replied, "No, I didn't know I needed to." I opened up the footlocker of MREs, found a nasty hot dog MRE, tossed it to John, and said, "Tomorrow you will requisition more MREs, but you can have that one for tonight." I sat on my cot and John asked, "Where am I sleeping tonight?" I pointed to one cot and said, "That's Sergeant Blaine's cot, so you can't use it." Then I pointed at the other cot and said, "That was my old aide's cot. You can use it when you can prove to me you know how to make a bed." I ripped the sheets off it and tossed them on the floor. John picked up the sheets and began to make the cot. I watched him and asked, "What are you doing?" John answered, "I'm making the bed." I shook my head and asked, "With the sheets I just threw on the floor? Don't you have any honor?" "John, take those sheets and go requisition new clean sheets." John asked, "Where would I do that?" I was pissed off and ordered, "Grab the sheets and follow me." He grabbed the sheets, and we walked toward the laundry. Some aid I had. I was going to end up doing not only my work, but also his work. We got to the laundry and got the clean sheets, but John was slouching again. I looked at him and asked, "What did I say was going to happen if you slouched again?" He immediately fixed his posture, but it was too late. He replied, "You said I would run laps until I puked." I smiled and said, "That's right, and that's what we're going to do right now." I took his butt to the track and ordered, "Start running, and if you slouch while you're running, I'm going to kick your butt." He started off at barely a walking pace, so I ran up behind him, kicked him in the butt, and ordered, "Move it, John." He sped up a little, then slowed down, so I ran up and kicked his butt again. We kept this game up for an hour until John finally puked on a bush. I walked over and said, "Now it's time to make your bed." John asked, "What about a shower? I smell terrible." He was right. He did smell bad, so I said, "First take your clean sheets to our room. Then go back to the laundry and requisition a clean uniform, underwear, and a towel. Then hit the showers. By the way, you've got 15 minutes to shower. If you take any longer, you won't get your MRE for dinner." John and I hauled to my room. He put the sheets down on the cot and left for the laundry. I started my timer because I was sure he wouldn't be done in 15 minutes. 30 minutes later, he walked into the room. I pointed at the timer and said, "You're late, so no dinner for you. Now let me show you how to make a bed. Then you will strip the bed and continue to remake it until it's correct." I finished, took a quarter out of my pocket, bounced it on the bed, and it bounced nicely. I handed John the quarter and said, "Go try this on Ben's bed." He tried it on Ben's bed, where it bounced right off the bed and onto the floor. John asked, "How did he get that so tight?" I smiled and said, "That's a lesson for later. Now remake your bed until I can bounce a quarter on it." I started to read a book, and it took John the rest of the night, but he finally got it right. I praised his final attempt. "Good job, John. There's only one problem." He asked, "What's that?" I replied, "You're not going to have that much time to make it tomorrow morning. My guess is shortly after Reveille, Colonel Maggie will breeze into our room for an inspection. That reminds me, where's your foot locker?" John replied, "Back at my old bunk." I upbraided him and said, "Haul back to your old bunk and hope to hell no one stole it or anything in it, because if anything is missing, our butts are grass." He took off and came back 30 minutes later with his footlocker. I opened it and almost wished someone had stolen it, since this was going to take most of the rest of the night to fix. Flashback. Masha, the next day. Louise and I were up early again and did our Tebow and yoga. She went to shower while I made breakfast. Oatmeal again today, but this time I added some fresh berries and slivered almonds. I was almost complete when Brenda rang the doorbell. I opened the door and she said, "Here's Tina and her high chair. I wish you luck." I offered, "We're going to have breakfast. You might as well come in and join us." Louise came out of the shower, walked into the kitchen, and said, "Hello, Brenda, how are you?" Brenda was getting Tina in her high chair and replied, "I'm fine. I guess I'm joining you for breakfast." As I set the oatmeal in front of them, Linda started to make number noises, so Louise started to feed her while Tina looked at the oatmeal and began to cry. I took a spoon, put a berry on it, and put it in Tina's mouth. She smiled and began to chew the food. Brenda remarked, "That's amazing." I countered, "Not really. I knew that Tina would only eat fruit, so I added the berries to the oatmeal today. Most mornings we don't have them." Louise said, "I really like the oatmeal with the berries in it." I interrupted, "No, Louise, we can't have berries every morning, so forget it." Brenda questioned, "What's going on with the two of you?" Louise said, "My mean Auntie Masha says we eat too much sugar, so she's cut us off." Brenda asked, "But didn't I see you drink a soda yesterday?" I gave Louise a sad look and started, "Louise, you promised me." Louise interrupted, "Sorry, Masha, it was the middle of the afternoon, I was tired, and needed something to wake me up. I promise I won't do it today." I looked at Brenda and asked, "Brenda, will you make sure Louise keeps her promise today?" Brenda said, "You bet." I finished feeding Tina the last bite of oatmeal, and Brenda remarked, "Masha, you're a miracle worker. She ate all her food, and it wasn't fruit." I replied, "No, but I did cheat with the berries in it. Lunch and dinner will be the real test." Louise looked at her watch and said, "Well, Brenda, we'd better leave if we're going to get to work on time." They kissed their girls and left. I took the girls out of their high chairs, cleaned them up, took them to the garage, and put them in their rolling walkers while I did a longer workout. Things went well until lunchtime. Flashback. Jennifer, the hospital. I woke up from my terrible dream. Ben had married another woman. I sat up in bed, which was a mistake, and yelled in pain. The nurse came in and scolded me. "Jennifer, you weren't supposed to raise your head yet." I honestly confessed. I had a terrible dream which scared me, so I naturally sat up. Now I have a throbbing headache. The nurse suggested, "I will bring you a pill for the pain." She left as I tossed and turned on my pillow in pain. She finally returned. I took the pain pill and asked, "How long will it take to work?" The nurse replied, "It will take about 30 minutes to work, so you need to be patient until then." She stayed and held my hand, which made me feel better until finally the pain pill worked, and I said, "I'm sleepy again." She suggested, "Sleep will help to fix your problems, so if you are sleepy, go to sleep." I rolled over in my bed. It hurt my head some, but I fell right to sleep. I woke up and was surprised. Grandmother was here and was holding my hand. I asked, "Grandmother, what are you doing here?" She smiled at me and replied, "When I heard my favorite granddaughter was hurt, I needed to come and make sure the doctors were taking good care of you." I giggled and said, "But grandmother, I'm your only granddaughter, and you better not let mother see you or she will be upset." Mother and grandmother didn't get along and fought whenever they were together. She smiled and said, "All the better reason to come and see you, but don't worry since Glenn has taken Evelyn home for the night." As grandmother held my hand, a warmth and peace spread through my entire body. She had done this before, and I loved it when she did it. Grandmother remarked, "Gracious my girl, what in the world did they do to your head?" Her hands gently cradled my head, and I felt relief as all the pain left my head and my thoughts cleared. Grandmother remarked, "There, my child, you're all well now." I asked, "You fixed the hole in my head?" She smiled and replied, "Not only that, I made your hair grow back." I wondered, "Grandmother, why can't mother do this?" Grandmother smiled and sadly replied, "Jennifer, sometimes it skips a generation, or in your mother's case, folks turn away from it. When the time is right, you will be able to do the same type of healing. Now, my granddaughter, I must leave before the hospital staff finds me since it's after visiting hours." I wondered if I was dreaming as grandmother left until I reached back, touched the back of my head, and could tell she was correct. The bandages were gone and my hair was its normal length. The doctors will be confused tomorrow. However, mother will certainly know what happened, and she will be angry about it. Flashback. Alexei, back in his room. Pure pandemonium continued in the hallway as I glanced out the door. As the psychologist still chased the orderlies, they ran from him with shrieks of fear. While he swore, "I'm going to beat all of you scumsuckers until you're half dead. That will teach you for getting into the medicine cabinet." Yes, this was much better than using chow mein for my tests since I could get instant feedback on the results of the experiments. I went to my stash of pills, took out 4 of the green pills, and opened them up. I put the powder in an empty water bottle, filled it up, and tossed it into the hallway. On the next lap past my room, one of the orderlies grabbed the bottle, took a big drink, and then shared it with the others. Oh boy, this should prove interesting when the narcotic began to take effect. With the orderlies and the psychologist gone, I slipped out of my room, went to the orderly station, found the unlocked narcotic cabinet, and took as many of the narcotics as I could carry, especially the dangerous ones. They ran past the orderly station one more time as I slipped out, ran back to my room, and made sure to carefully hide all the new narcotics. There was more yelling in the hallway, so I cracked the door and heard the orderlies make a stand. "We're not running from you anymore." The psychologist swore. "Good. I was getting tired of running, and now I can kick your butts." A huge fight broke out. I closed the door, bolted it, and wondered what sort of monsters I had created. Flashback. Mira and Ira continued. I awoke and asked, "Was the cauterization procedure successful?" Ira replied, "Judge for yourself." I looked and Ira had done a remarkable job with the limited medical instruments she possessed. Ira said, I said, "Mira, we need to bind your wound and depart." Mira concurred. "Yes, we should bind my injury since I do not want any disability to hinder our search for Kostia." I included. Or his many men. I bound Myra's wound, and she said, "I cannot wait until all his men are terminated since then he will be forced to come after us in person." I smiled at my sister and said, "Then we will feast on the desserts of just." Flashback. Todd, on the mission. I was sleeping well until a knock on my door awakened me. I ignored it thinking it was Gail until I heard a whisper, "Todd, this is Maria, and I need to talk to you." I made sure I was decent, got up, unlocked the door, and Maria came into my room. I signed, "What's wrong?" Maria confessed, "Todd, I am worried about tomorrow when we go back to our apartment to pick up our things. There could be some trouble." I signed, "Trouble of a physical nature?" Maria nodded and signed, "That's correct. If they know we are moving out, they might demand a payment from us." I was fully awake now, so I hugged Maria and signed, "Maria, do they require a monthly payment from you for living there?" Maria replied, "Yes, they call it a protection fee, but it has never made either of us feel safe. I always felt they were waiting for Gail to get older, then they were going to assault her." I asked, "Do you feel safe here?" Maria confessed, "Yes, I feel very safe here. But I worry that Gail might try to bring some of her old friends here, to show off to them." We heard a noise at the door, and upon looking found Gail as she signed, "Are you crazy? Once we leave that neighborhood, I never want anyone knowing we live here. Didn't you hear what happened to the people who own this house before us? If they know we live here, they will come here and kill us." But Maria is right. We will have problems picking up our things from the apartment. I smiled at the both of them and said, "What if we get the realtor's bodyguard and me to go to the apartment with you?" Maria worried, "But Todd, they have guns and might kill you." I smiled and signed, "Don't worry, I have a few guns of my own." Gail signed, Well, I'm going back to my room. Don't make too much noise and keep me awake. Maria swore, Dios mío, someday that girl is going to go too far. But Maria didn't leave. Instead, she got up, shut the door, and locked it. Then she came to me, and I sighed. Maria, I do not have protection. Maria smiled and said, Todd, do not worry. If I have a child this time, I will be in a safe place where she will not be injured like Gail was. I signed. I wondered if you were going to tell me she was your daughter. Maria gasped, how did you know? I signed. It was easy for me to tell since many of your features are similar. You must have been very young when it happened. Maria confessed, yes, I was 12 when a group of boys in my neighborhood took me into a building and assaulted me so many times I lost count. I woke up and it was over. Then when my father found out I was pregnant, he blamed me and punched me in the abdomen. I signed. So he caused Gail's problems? She cried a little and said, yes, because my father beat me. Gail will never hear. I wanted retribution, so I signed. Where is your father now? Maria said, he drank himself to death after Gail was born. I signed. And those men that still bother you? Were they the ones who assaulted you? Maria said, yes, it was them. They are waiting to do the same to Gail. I made up my mind that those men were going to die. Present, Ben, Jens, and others, the plan. Tom starts to go over the plan for the SIF semi with Jens when suddenly I have a feeling. And this is one of those feelings I can't ignore. I hug Jens and say, whatever you two configure is fine with me. I need to make sure the front gate is covered. Jens gives me a strange look and asks, Ben, what's wrong? I smile at her and lie a little. Nothing. I just feel we need to be safe, rather than sorry. I gather the security team at the front gate, head to the weapons safe, and pull out a heavy machine gun. I motion toward 2 boxes of ammo and order, grab those and throw them on the cart. We wheel the cart into the garage, load the ammo and the gun into the back of my truck, and I drive to the gate. I back my truck across the entrance to the cabin and against the blockhouse. We unload the weapon and ammo, setting it up. Just as I get ready to move my truck, a car comes screaming around the corner. The back end is sagging under the weight of something, and we hear a shout from inside. I take one look at the drivers and order, take them down. The guards in the blockhouse open fire, but our hits don't stop the car. It barrels straight into my truck and then erupts into a massive explosion, the fireball tossing me back about 15 feet. I hear a whump sound, look at Tom and say, I recognize that sound. Something exploded somewhere. The head of security runs into the room, sounds the klaxon and says, a car bomb attacked the front gate. My heart about dies because that's where Ben was headed. I run my butt off, fly outside and see a huge fire at the front gate. I begin to run toward the gate when Tom grabs my arm and stops me, hands me a rifle and says, Jennifer, you know better than to head into a battle zone without proper equipment. He's right, so I take the rifle and say, thanks, but Ben was headed up there and I need to check on him. I run as fast as I can, and as I draw closer to the gate I realize that Ben's truck is on fire. Then, thank God, I see Ben start to stand up. I change my direction and run toward him. Son of a bitch. The scumsuckers blew up my truck. Thank God I wasn't in it. I look over at the blockhouse and again thank God because it's still standing. I pull my pistol, just in case, then I hear footsteps approaching behind me. I begin to turn when Jens jumps full force against me, which knocks us both to the ground. She begins to smother me with kisses as I try to fight her off, and she complains, Ben, the next time you have a... This time I shut her up with a kiss. I pull away and interrupt. The scumsuckers blew up my truck. Jens yells, who in the frickin' heck cares about your truck? We will buy you a new one. Now the next time you have a feeling like this, you'd better let me know. I slap her butt and complain, I myself in the frickin' hell care about my truck. We've been through hell and high water together. Then I remember something and order, Jens, we need to check on the security team in the blockhouse. Jens gets off of me, helps me up, and we head toward the blockhouse. I notice Jens carrying the M4 and direct. Let's trade. You take my pistol, and I will take the rifle. We trade weapons and I command. Okay, we're going to approach this carefully, just in case. Jens and I begin to leapfrog our way toward my truck in the blockhouse. Ira and Mira arrive carrying PSG-1S and Ira commands, Mr. and Ms. Blaine, it is our function to cover this situation. I counter Ira's command and order. Like hell, we're all going to work our way to the blockhouse to check on the security team. Tom finally runs up and asks the obvious, damn, is that your truck? I respond, it sure is. Tom fall in, we're working our way to the blockhouse to check on the security team. We can't get close to the truck because it's too hot, so we skirt the truck and work our way around the backside of the blockhouse. Ira and Mira pie the corner as a team. When they give me the all-clear sign, I look in the window, see our 2 security men lying on the ground, and announce, shit, they're hurt. We all enter the blockhouse. Ira orders, I will operate the Browning M2, Mod Deuce, machine gun. Mira, Deduce a premium observational location and cover the area with your PSG-1. Mira hauls up to the top of one of the hills. I begin to check them in and say, well, they're both breathing, but there's some blood coming out of their ears, so they might have some hearing problems. However, I think they'll live. The head of security shows up, in my opinion several days late and many dollars short, and I order, call an ambulance for these two men. Yin says, I already made the call for the ambulance, and also called Sheriff Jim. He told me we weren't the only ones attacked today. They also tried to take out Samantha. Ira swears, and I have to fight back a laugh. Those illegitimate progeny of a female Saluki. They will rue the day they attacked the Blaines. I will hunt them and their illegitimate offspring to Perdition's Gate. We realize that Ira has a comm unit when she announces, Mira announces there is an incoming vehicle which appears to be an ambulance. She has contacted them and asked them to terminate their approach. Tom, please relieve me on the Browning M2 while I approach the vehicle and verify their identity. I look at the security officer and demand, where the hell is your comm unit? He tries to backpedal. I didn't have time. I interrupt and threaten. Mira and Ira sure the hell had the time. Don't worry, because soon you will have more than enough time on your hands. I watch as Ira, carefully and very professionally approaches the ambulance. Hell, I couldn't have done better myself. She has the paramedics exit the ambulance while she inspects it, and then waves it through. Ira rides on the back of the ambulance as they haul to the blockhouse. The paramedics complain, we sure as hell don't like having guns pointed at us. Ira counters, this has become a combat hostilities zone. Be thankful that we only pointed our weapons at you. I defuse the situation by saying, we have two men down with slight bleeding out of their ears. They probably have hearing issues as well as concussions. The mouthy paramedic orders, just move the hell out of the way and let us do our jobs. Ira's hand heads toward the katana on her back, but I make a motion with my hand, and thank God she stops. Ira announces, Mira has informed me that another two vehicles approach. One appears to be the sheriff's vehicle, the other is possibly a news van from the Truth Network. Tom, if you would please continue your position at the Browning M2 machine gun, I will again verify their identity. Present, Samantha and Bill, Stacy's place, and headed to the cabin. I get a phone call from Liz, and she says, Samantha, there's been a terror attack at the cabin and a car bomb just destroyed the front gate. I interrupt. Liz, Vic just killed a suicide bomber here in Leadville. Liz praises his response. I knew it was a good thing to hire him for a bodyguard. Listen, there's a huge fire at the front gate, so if nothing is happening there, grab a camera operator and get over here. I inform her, Liz, nothing is going on here until the CBI bomb squad arrives. I will leave one camera operator here and bring John with me. I notice Bill and Vic messing with the dead terror. I head over just in time to hear Bill say, I praise Victor. Vic, that was a hell of a shot. You blew off the whole back of his head. Any place else would have detonated the vest. Vic says, yeah, I've seen too many of these scumsuckers in the sandbox, so I knew where to shoot him. Now we need to take care of the dead man switch. Vic sees me and orders, Samantha, please move back inside the restaurant and make sure no one is close to any windows. Samantha says before she obeys, when you're done, we're grabbing John and heading to the cabin. The terrors just detonated a car bomb over there. I ask, are there any injuries? Sheriff Jim walks up and says, hell, when it rains it pours. Come on, Samantha, we're headed to the Blaine's cabin. I again ask, are there any injuries? Sheriff Jim says, they called for an ambulance, so someone must be injured. I tell the sheriff, don't worry, we will secure this area until the CBI bomb squad arrives. I motion to my security team, and they take up position as Vic tapes the terror's hand closed over the dead man's switch. I breathe a sigh of relief once that's done. Jim the sheriff, Vic, Samantha, and John the camera operator leave while we wait for the CBI bomb squad. Present, Ben, Jens, and others, after the attack. Sheriff Jim and the Truth Network then show up at the front gate conflagration. I hear Ira order, please cease the locomotivation of your vehicles and remain inside your vehicles until I can verify your identities. Jim apparently thinks he's immune to Ira's commands, so he exits his vehicle, and I hear Mira fire several fast volleys. Remember, the PSG-1 is the most accurate semi-automatic rifle made. The rounds strike at Jim's feet. He dances around better than he ever did in high school, and I about laugh my butt off. To further add to the overall confusion, Tom fires a short burst from Ma Deuce over their heads, then yells, get back in the car like you were ordered. Jim wisely gets back into his car. Ira more slowly than ever makes her way to the vehicles. I'm sure to agitate Jim. Verifies that it is Sheriff Jim. Hell, I could have told her if I could have stopped laughing. Then checks the news van and waves them through. Jim comes roaring up in his police cruiser, jumps out, and begins to complain. Son of a bitch, I should arrest the whole bunch of you. I laugh, which doesn't help, and Tom counters, excuse out of me. What gives you the right to arrest a U.S. Marshal? I decide to defuse the situation and say, listen, Jim, we damn near got blown to hell and back. Shit, the scumsuckers destroyed my truck. This has become a war zone, and we are going to control it how we see fit. If you don't like it, then leave, because with Tom here as the law enforcement, there's nothing you can do. I further defuse things by being nice. Jim, thank you for coming so quickly, but as you can see, we are more than safe now. Something buzzes overhead and Ira swears, son of a female Saluki. What sort of demonic beast is that? I calm her by saying, Ira, that's a drone that Gretchen has launched. It will help to patrol the area. Please instruct Mira to not shoot it down. Ira does as requested, and then says, Gretchen has accessed our communications link and has informed us there are no further threats in the local area. This drone device could be valuable for reconnaissance. I smile at Ira and reply, that's exactly what it's designed for. Then Ira giggles and says, however, Mira still desires attempting to shoot it down. Apparently Gretchen hears the threat and makes the drone buzz Mira. Ira says, Mira is very annoyed by the drone. Gretchen, please desist in agitating my sister. I notice that Samantha and Jim are out of the Truth Network van filming things, so I suggest to Ben, perhaps we should make a statement. Ben laughs and suggests, hell yes, you're our spokesmodel. You make the statement. I grab my husband's hand and say, oh no you don't. You have details that I don't, so come on. Ben gives what has to be the most boring and factual report ever. Samantha looks at me. I smile at her, and she asks, tell me, Jennifer, were you worried about Ben? I nod my head and reply, of course I was. I heard the explosion in the tunnels and recognized what it was. When I came to the surface, all I saw was the fire consuming Ben's truck. Jennifer turns the tables on me when she asks, Samantha, I heard you had an incident today with a suicide bomber. I sputter, well, yes I did, however my bodyguard saved me. Jennifer continues with her questioning. Didn't you just hire your bodyguard? I try to bring the questions back to Jennifer by asking, so when did you realize that Ben was alive? Jennifer would have none of that when she again asks, didn't you just hire your bodyguard? I finally reply, yes I hired him a few days ago. Before Jennifer could control things again, I ask, so what are your plans? Jennifer grabs Ben's hand, smiles at the camera, and in an almost practiced attitude says, thank you for asking, Samantha. We're going to rent a motorhome and take that trip to Disneyland that Ben mentioned and finish our honeymoon. Liz comes up and interrupts, which shocks me. Yince, that sounds like a great idea. When are you leaving? Yince smiles and says, as soon as we rent the motorhome. She looks at Ben and asks, honey, how soon can we leave? Ben simply replies, the sooner the better. Liz motions to me to end the interview, so I look at the camera and say, there you have it, America. Not even a terror attack can foil the plans of America's couple. John stops the camera. I move to Liz and ask, Liz, what the hell? She interrupts me. Sam, the terrors are using your news reports to follow Ben and Yince. I now realize what Liz did and thank her. Liz, I didn't have any idea. Thank you. Liz says, Sam, in a couple days you will do a report on Ben and Yince leaving in a motorhome for Disneyland. I smile and say, but in reality, they aren't going anywhere near Disneyland. Liz replies, of course not. The danger to the public from the terrors would be too great. I nod my head and agree. Yeah, Liz, I got lucky today. Liz replies, I knew Vic was a good man when I hired him. Are you having any problems from Stacy? I reply, Bill was just beginning to talk to me about it when Vic killed the suicide bomber. Liz reinforces, Sam, it's vital to keep Vic as an employee of the Truth Network. I ask, why's that, Liz? She says, Sam, I know Stacy is your BFF, but she's not always stable. Just look at her trying to shoot Ben. She could get tired of paying Vic's salary and fire him. I defend Stacy. Liz, I know that Stacy would never do that. So what if she offers Vic a better deal? Liz asks, Sam, please ask Stacy to not do that. I ask a question that's been on my mind. Will we be able to formalize my part ownership of the network before Ben and Jennifer leave? Liz smiles and says, of course we will, but first we have to get through this crisis. Just so you know, Ben was much closer to dying today than anyone would like to confess. I gasp, Liz, I can't believe it. Liz confirms it. That's right. If he had been in his truck, he would have died. As it is, the 2 security guards are on their way to a Denver hospital with serious concussions and damaged hearing. My phone rings. I look at it and say, it's Bill. I should answer this. I answer the call and Bill says, Samantha, the CBI bomb squad is here. If you're not busy, you might want to get some videos of this. I smile at Liz and say, the CBI bomb squad has arrived. I think I will go and see if I can get some video of them disarming the suicide vest. Liz cautions, Samantha, be careful since we now know that you are a target. Vic, John the camera operator, and I walk back to the van where Vic says, I will drive. As we leave, I can't help but feel a little sorry for Ben and Jennifer. All they want is a good life, and now the terrors are after them. I contemplate how my reports have played a large part in this and decide that sometimes I will need to modify what I say to protect some people. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.